I'm Nicola Talent and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.
So what happened today, Clodagh?
So this morning, the case was in legal argument, but then after the jury returned this afternoon, we went into some of the DNA evidence from the case. So we had a witness from Forensic Science Ireland who has been a forensic scientist there for the last 16 years. And she gave some information about items and clothing that were taken from Noel Long's home in Cork on the 1st of December 2021. And about how that they were submitted by Gardaí to Forensic Science Ireland for DNA profiling. So they took from the home a pair of boots, a pair of socks, a black beanie, a hat, as well as a toothbrush and a razor, which were all received into the laboratory by a member of their intake team.
So that would have been in around 2008, was it, that these items were sent on to Forensic Science Ireland? If this scientist is working only 16 years, the case, of course, is 42 years cold. So those items from Noel Long's house were taken back 42 years ago, or?
It seems to me that there, and from what was the evidence that was given today, that those items were only submitted into Forensic Science Ireland on that day in December 2021. Now, there was no information given about when they had been taken from Noel's house. They had just, because it was that forensic scientist giving the information, she was only given the information that was known to her. Mm-hmm. So according to her, it was that day in December.
So they're probably trying to build up a profile in at this point, and then obviously the case that the state are going to make is that matches the profile that was taken 42 years ago.
Yeah.
Some of the from the body of the victim. So.
Absolutely, yeah, that seems to be what was happening. You know, as she went through her evidence, she said that, you know, she kind of explained that she took evidence from, or was able to get a full DNA profile from 4 of the items. She didn't try with the boots because, you know, they weren't kind of a sufficient item to take a sample from. But yeah, she was able to take that information, and she sent it over to the forensic scientist in the UK in May of 2022.
So in 2008, 27 years after the crime, the court has already heard it was decided to send the preserved samples that were taken from Miss Sheehan's body during the post-mortem examination to that lab in the UK. Mm-hmm. And they had the capability to analyse small samples. And then this evidence is relating to November 2021, when the samples taken from the accused, there's an attempt to match them with the original DNA from Nora Sheehan's body.
Yes.
So this is really the crux of this case, isn't it? This DNA, and we were told that at the opening.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible actually. If you saw some of the evidence yesterday, some of the people, the ages of people giving the evidence. I think there was retired detectives in their 80s. I think there was one guy who was 91.
Right.
There was people. So I mean, this is what there's a huge passage of time. This is why this case is so unusual, I suppose, or uncommon anyway. So the DNA is obviously going to be the central part of it. And
what evidence was heard on Monday in the court?
So on Monday, the court heard how actually the pathologist who had carried out the postmortem on Nora Sheehan's body had died a number of weeks after that happened. I think it was Dr. Coakley was his name, and he died on the 5th of August in 1981. So in the postmortem that was read out to the court on Monday, it was Dr. Coakley's notes. He said that he'd visited Shippull Woods on June 12th, 1981, the day that Nora Sheehan's body was found, and he found her body lying partly on her back. He went to the scene the next day where he found, or he gathered up some of the evidence that was there. He said there was a bundle of loose clothing lying on the upper part of her body. A garment was pulled over the trunk of their body and their head, and he also noted that there was numerous flies and maggots present in the face and in her hair, and that actually made up there was evidence given today of what the forensic exhibits were that were submitted to the lab back in 1981, and a number of them had to be thrown out or disposed of, or because of the fact that they were a hazard to scientists who may go to take material from them, because of the fact that they were so infested with with flies and blue bottles. Yeah, it was,
and that of course would suggest that her body had lain there a period of time.
Absolutely.
What's the timeline? When is she last seen?
So
and what happens her?
Yeah, so she's last seen on the early morning hours of June 6th. So where we left off in the last podcast we recorded, we had said that she had been seen up to 4 a.m. that morning. She had been in the hospital. She had a dog bite. She got a tetanus shot. She got her bandage on her arm. She left the hospital. Now, she was then seen between the hours of 12 a.m. and 4 a.m. on the road, acting strangely, as they put it, kind of in air quotes. And that's when she was last seen.
Mm-hmm. So she was last seen trying to wave down cars. I think we heard a bit of evidence that she had worked in a hospital herself, and that she had some sort of an accident in work which almost changed her personality and left her kind of vulnerable. And this waving down cars on the roadside was kind of part of what she was doing.
And you heard as well how her son had reported her missing in the aftermath, James Sheehan Jr. And there was evidence about how she'd been exactly treated in the hospital. And then you also heard evidence as well from retired Superintendent Matthew Thorne, who was 91 years old now.
My goodness.
And he has given evidence, which is another part of the prosecution's case, about how Noel Long was stopped in a car in the Curraheen Road in Bishopstown in County Cork 4 days on June the 16th, which is in the aftermath.
And Long was 32 years old then, and he was driving an Opel Kadett.
Yeah. So, and then you also heard from retired Detective Inspector Colin Dardis, who's 86, and he described attending Bridewell Garda Station and in examining the car as well. So that in itself is...
So he's 86, so he would have been 46 at the time of the...
Journalist maths.
Yeah.
That's all dry.
So it's 42 years ago.
Yeah.
86 minus 42. Come on,
44.
children.
44.
Oh, yeah, I got it right.
44. and obviously then retired Superintendent Matthew Thorne, 91, so 42 years ago would be...
89, 79, 49, 79. 49 he was.
49, yeah.
We need to get a giant calculator for in here, don't we? We really do.
You see that screen? If you were able to kind of, if somebody was behind the scenes, we could hire somebody to just sit there and do the mathematics for us. But no, it's interesting. I mean, they were probably, they were in their 40s. They were at the height of their careers. And you know what? Going back to 1981, like there weren't that many murders around the 70s and the 60s and the 70s and into the 80s in Ireland.
Rural Ireland.
Certainly not in rural Ireland. And also a lot of the policing would have been concerned in those days to, terrorism and the IRA and all the rest of it. And of course there was a lot of attacks and bombings and kidnappings and all the rest of it. So in a way you can see why it probably was a standout event in their careers, these men, and that they are still mindful enough to be able to go into a court of law, stand up and give evidence is just fascinating, isn't it?
Fascinating.
Absolutely,
It is so unusual, I think,
So what happens with the arrest of Noel Long? Has evidence been given in relation to that, in relation to what happened next? As regards the investigation?
No, there's been no evidence of that yet at all, about kind of, where he was arrested, if he was questioned, what led to his arrest or him being pulled over or anything like that. There's been absolutely no evidence of that so far. The majority of the evidence is around Miss Sheehan, her activities the night that she vanished, her body, the way it was found, and the exhibits of the evidence that was taken from her body.
So Noel Long has obviously pled not guilty to murder. And did we hear how long the case is going to go, and would he have a chance to present his defence? Is there any timeline?
Yeah, so the original suggested timeline last Thursday when the case opened was 4 weeks. However, today senior counsel for the prosecution, Brendan Grehan, said that he expects to rest his case on this Friday. So it seems to be moving at a faster pace than they may have anticipated to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, obviously then Noel Long will get a chance to make his case if he wishes to call any witnesses. He may or may not. Obviously, anybody accused of a serious crime can give evidence in their defence, though most obviously don't. So that would all take another period of time.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll have to see what happens. I mean, at the end of today, we didn't get to hear much evidence because of the fact that there was that issue with the legal argument this morning. We heard a lot about the different swabs that were taken, the different kinds of evidence that was found around Nora Sheehan's body, such as her clothing. There was also some of the foliage that she was found among. There was fibres from her home that were taken as well, which again, and the bedclothes from her house as well, which I will assume will come into play because there's those mentioned from the start that there will be evidence that the fibres did match some of the car from Noel Long's car. And then at the end of the day, there was one juror dismissed, and the reason that was given to the jury was that it's of no concern to them, and the judge asked them not to speculate on why the juror was dismissed.
So it's down to 11.
Down to 11
jurors at this stage. And look, I mean, depending on defence now, I mean, obviously the judge and the court will be told what they're doing, but I mean, this case could finish very quickly. It could be finished within 2 weeks. I mean, having said that, he's well within his rights to call as many witnesses as he so wishes, and maybe that could take a long time as well. But we will dip back into it maybe Friday.
Yes, we'll be back on
and
Friday.
See what's going on. And we're going to just, for the moment, stick completely and utterly just to what's been said in court, because we don't want to cause any difficulties within the proceedings ourselves. We'll be freer to talk, no doubt, in the aftermath of whatever verdict is reached. Yeah. Okay. So thanks, Clodagh.
No problem. Thank you.